Yeah, as more corporations are involved in social marketing, trying to do viral marketing and using brands and so forth, I'm wondering what the attitude of the kids teams that you interview are towards that sort of marketing.
First of all, they have no idea that it exists. So what's very funny to me is actually how often they get mistakes, and the mistakes are where it becomes really clear. So I'll deal with young people who, for various reasons, thought it was really funny to say they were 69, ha ha ha, on the various sites that they're on. And so they're really surprised when they get advertisements that are things like Depends, which is always really funny. And those are like the simple mistakes where this is not even intelligent targeted marketing, this is just straight age marketing. That's when they notice it and they think it's funny. I'll watch young people who will play with words in their accounts just to see what ads can pop up. That's the most kinds of nuance that I see in terms of the awareness of targeted marketing. One of the things you hear from young people about marketing more generally is that marketing and advertisements to them signal that it will stay free. If it doesn't have advertisements on it, they're convinced they will one day have to pay for it, right? And that becomes an interesting challenge for their own perspective of how they end up seeing a lot of this content. So they see free as good, they don't actually have any of the trade-offs. Again, there's been great data on adults. Adults aren't much better at this. So I see young people, when it comes to targeted marketing, as being about equivalent to adults on a lot of these sort of measures. And again, we're in a community who is much more aware than the rest of the country on any of these major issues. But I see the awareness being so low across the board. And by the way, the parents aren't any better. I actually interview the parents as well. They don't have a clue either.
So just during the lunch, one of the people was talking about how parents constantly monitor children, and if you have that kind of monitoring, then it actually makes and shows that children don't value privacy because they never had that sense of privacy. So I was wondering if the alternative to monitoring children all the time is to actually create awareness about their information sharing practices. And this is something that I've been talking to other people about, that when you're on, when you're very small, you have some idea of certain social norms, such as stealing is bad, or if you share something, you have to ask for permission, or use someone else's thing. Wouldn't it make more sense to try and inculcate that kind of social norms about looking at other people's information or not looking at other people's information?
Right, so the thing, parents have a funny role in all of this, right? And on one hand, you want parents to be educators, you want them to be super engaged, you want them to help young people work these things out. But one of the things that I found is that parents are generally not much better themselves at doing it, and are usually just think of it as sort of binaries. And I'm doing this really crazy project right now on sexting, so sexting is smack in the middle of my head right now. And one of the things I was sort of fascinated by is I talked to a lot of young people about sexting and their own practices. And I was shocked to find how many of them were first exposed to sexting by picking up their parents' phone. And horrifically finding pictures of their mother naked, which they were not prepared for. So, on one hand, you have sort of this generational divide about what parents can do or educate. I see a lot more of the learning work happening within the peer groups, where people are actually talking amongst themselves and being like, that wasn't cool. I really didn't want you to put up that picture of me, but I thought you looked good. I don't care if I looked good, I don't want it to be there. It's actually, the privacy norms are being worked out at a peer level. They're not being worked out at a parent-child level. Parent-child level in many ways around this stuff is not actually helpful, and you really want some of those peer structures. So part of it is actually, how do you see the norms? And I should highlight, I'm giving you sort of a course overview. There are huge variations in young people and what they think the norms are, right? About like what is to be shared and what is not to be shared, and they're really trying to untangle all of that. But parents, unfortunately, I would love for them to be helpful in all this and to ask critical questions. And I find that in the most educated communities, that tends to actually be happening. But outside of that, unfortunately, not much.
This will be the
last question, sorry.
I was curious about your statement, the case you gave of the kid working so hard, creating all these different groups for different kinds of talk. And I was wondering, what kinds of technology would you like to see that would help empower them to make good privacy choices? There are sites like Ning.com and Crowdvine where you can sort of do your own social network. Have you ever seen them go to lengths to kind of create their own subgroup apart from Facebook?
So the young people who leave Facebook to create separate communities are typically the most marginalized populations who want segmentations for various reasons. LGBT youth are a notable population on this. But also, basically the early adopters of most social tech, self-defined geeks, freaks, and queers. Right? They have used a ton of different services. They're still doing that. If you look at the popularity of things like DeviantArt, if you look at what's going on with Tumblr, even if you look at what's happening with Twitter, you'll see some of these sort of moves. Twitter is really fascinating to me because I was really shocked when I was in the field how often Twitter would come up as being a more private alternative than Facebook. And at first I was like, what are you talking about? And they made it very clear that Twitter's privacy structures are actually very easy because it's either they're your friend or they're not your friend. And if you actually make a protected account, you can actually bound it really well. And most of the young people that I talk to who are using Twitter are using it privately, which, given the number of young people that I'm seeing using it publicly, means that there's a huge number of people that are using it privately. And I don't have numbers on that at all. I wish I did. Tumblr, on the other hand, has it publicly and is more about encoding through different means. In terms of technologies that will actually sort of solve this, part of it is that I would implore those who are working in the tech industry to actually watch what people do and dance with them and to realize that all technology will be repurposed. What's powerful to me about young people's actions is not that we can predict the super logout approach, but the idea that they're using technological tools that are available to them to really achieve their goals, even when the technology doesn't allow it. And what I get really frustrated by is not so much technologies that do or don't solve it, but technologies that purposely try to undermine what young people are doing. Because young people are trying to cope and deal with this. And so, in closing, I think that one of the places I would point out is that we often have this conversation in this community about privacy by default as being the ideal, and I actually don't think that that's necessarily true. I actually think that young people do a lot better when they know something is public by default, they find strategies to cope with it, and they deal with it accordingly, and they can pull it back to making it more private. But when something is private by default, and when they assume that the social conditions are particular to that environment, and then something changes, that tends to be far more costly, even when that change is just more people getting on the service. And so that's one of the things that I really struggle with in trying to make sense of this. And I'm being kicked off the stage, so I will say thank you very much.